This
and
conference will
organizers,
now be recorded.
Dr. Rajiv Arora, especially, who has given me this opportunity to share my views on wind energy, one of the topics, hot topics in renewable energy scenario as such. I'm thankful to the organizers that they have given me this opportunity to share my views with the August audience, which is available in this FTP. And fortunately, through Atal, we are able to have a very wide, say, exposure, and many people which are sitting, who are sitting at very remote places, they are able to connect through internet, and we are having a wider audience. So that is a great, say, initiative by Government of India, and I'm happy to be a part of this. Thank you again, the organizers. So let's start the presentation. So my presentation is on wind energy. I'm Dr. Rajiv Kumar Garg, working as professor, as already been told by Dr. Arora. So the presentation is organized into these main topics. World scenario in the renewable energy sector, wind, a natural phenomena, the characterization of wind, the various types of turbines, wind turbines, status of India, where India stands, advantages and challenges, then the frontier areas, and finally the conclusions of the talk. Now, the very first screen shows you the world energy consumption pattern as per the British Petroleum Energy Review 2020. You can say that from the year 1994 to 2019, there has been a steady increase in consumption of energy, and highest, say, percentage of energy consumption is through oil, crude oil. Then we have natural gas, coal, and renewables are very, very small amount of the total energy consumed as on day, but still it is growing. We can see for the last 15 years, it has been growing steadily. The second figure on the right hand side, it shows you the region-wise consumption pattern in the year 2019. So here we can see that renewables, they are again constituting very small part of 100%. This is a bar graph, so if 100% is the total consumption by uh, North America, so the say renewables are occupying very small amount again for other American countries, Europe. So this way you can see the data is being compiled, and we can see that world is moving towards renewable energy by and by. Now, there's another set of figures available from that BP Energy Review only. So you can see that the first figure shows you the consumption pattern given by the regions. So consumption pattern of renewables only. So here we are limiting ourselves to renewables. Renewables, the consumption pattern for the past decade, you can see that consumption has increased in the decade. And the increase of Asia Pacific is given by this yellow portion. For America, it is green portion and others. So it is mentioned in this figure. So you can see that definitely renewables are becoming a part of our daily lives. We are going to exploit renewable energy. We are consuming renewable energy as and when it is available. The second graph shows you the renewable generation by source. So here we can see that three sources have been earmarked. One is solar, second is wind, and the rest of them, which is ocean, then biomass, and all others, they have been coupled under the third category, others. So we can see that again, for the past decade, there has been an increase in the, say, the generation of energy through renewable resources, and we find that the generation of renewable resources is maximum with wind energy. So wind energy takes the largest part of the pie for the generation of renewable energy world over. Now this is hydroelectricity, another format of renewable energy. So here we can see that hydroelectricity has also increased, and the consumption has increased from year 94 to 2019. America, the hydro energy is almost constant, but in the Asia Pacific region, we find that the hydro energy has increased by jumps and starts because number of hydro projects have come up in Asia and Pacific region. So that's why we have an increase in the hydroelectricity produced in the Asia Pacific region. This table, it shows you the share, country by share of say various countries in the year 2019, how they are contributing towards renewables. US has a share of 6.2%. The highest share is Brazil, 16.3%. European Union is 11%, and so on. The data has been China is 4.7%, and world over, the total share of energy is 5% by renewables. The percentage increase from the year 2018, the last column in this table, it shows you that the things have gone up. We are increasing the production of renewables by this by year to year. So on the world scale, we have a international agency, what is called International Energy Agency, IEA. So this is a nodal agency which helps all the countries to shape up the sustainable energy future. So it is some sort of uh, say agency which is helping all the countries if they approach IEA for any advice, technical support or any other support. So they can help the countries to shape some sustainable energy in future. 90% contribution towards the renewables is by 10 only 10 countries, top 10 countries, as given in this table. So top 10 countries, they are there who are contributing to renewables in a major manner. China is the leading country in production of renewables. The wind energy is contributing the highest share of renewable energy, as already been said in the earlier slide. Now, this is a tabulated data from the same source in British Petroleum Energy Reviews. So this is the power generation compared for the year 2016, 2017, 2018, and 2019. So we can see from the table that Canada, USA, India, China, Japan, Europe, and world, the data is climbing from year to year. Let's say for India, 79.8 for the terawatt hours generation in year 2016. It has climbed up to 134.9 terawatt hours in the year 2019. China 369.5, it has climbed up to 732.3 when we compare the year 2016 to 2019. The world over, in the year 2016, the figure stood at 1838.9 in the year 2016, and it has climbed up to 2805.5 terawatt hours in the year 2019. The contribution by various sources, wind, solar, and others. Canada, USA, the same countries which are listed in the earlier table and the world level. So you can see that the major part of pie is being taken up by the wind. Out of the total, 49.3 for Canada, 34.2 is contributed by wind. USA 489.8, 303.1 is contributed by wind. India 134.9 is the total energy produced renewables in the year 2019. 63.3 of that is contributed by wind, and so on. You can say that wind has taken the major share of the pie. Now, let's see what is wind. Now, wind is a natural phenomena, which has been caused due to the presence of sun and the presence of solar energy. So, it can be easily said that wind is a form of solar energy. The reason for this phenomena is the uneven heating of Earth, which is causing the flow of air, which is called wind. Earth receives around 1.8 into 10 to the power 11 megawatt solar energy, and out of this, 2% is converted to the movement of air. So that comes to around 3.6 10 to the power 9 megawatts. Further, out of this 3.6 10 to the power 9 megawatts, 35% of this energy is available within 35% of wind energy is available within 1 kilometer of Earth's surface. So you can easily see that if we look up from Earth, we have energy available in the free air itself. The hot air at the equatorial plane rises because the equatorial plane is the hottest region on Earth and moves towards poles, while cold, denser air from poles tries to replace this hot air and it moves towards equator. So ideally, there should be a meridional circulation in each hemisphere. So ideally, when nothing else is being considered, there should be a flow of air from the equatorial plane towards poles and vice versa. So because the hot air will become less dense, it will rise and move towards poles, whereas the cold air from poles will replace it, which is denser air. But there are certain other phenomena which make this ideal situation non-ideal. First is the tilt in Earth's rotational axis, which we have studied in our lower classes also. So this tilt, which results in seasonal variations that we studied in our schools. So this tilt of 23.5 also influences the meridional circulation. Topography. The Earth's topography is not same everywhere. At certain places, we have mountains, we have valleys, hills, plains, or some other features. So obviously, these features will interfere with the movement of air. Thirdly, the covering on the Earth's crust. The Earth's crust is not again even situation everywhere, uniform situation everywhere. At certain places we have vegetation, at certain places we have water bodies, we have ice, land, deserts, etc. So all these coverings will again influence the behavior or the movement of air. Now the major effect of tilt is Coriolis effect. The tilt in rotational axis of Earth will results in Coriolis effect. So the rotation of Earth deflects the atmospheric movements, deflects the movements. It deflects towards right in the northern hemisphere and towards left in the southern hemisphere. So the air in the northern hemisphere is shifted towards right because of the say rotation of Earth, and it is shifted towards left in the southern hemisphere. This leads to the ideal meridional circulation into three parts. We have three types of cells identified: Hadley cell, Ferrel cell, and Polar cells. So this is a diagram. So say this is Earth. So North Pole and South Pole equator. So had it been an ideal situation, the hot air from equator should move towards poles and come back. The dense air from poles should come to equator. So we should have a hemispherical meridional circulation. But because of the Coriolis effect, because of rotation of Earth itself, the wind is thrown towards right in the northern hemisphere and it is thrown towards left in the southern hemisphere. So the Coriolis effect, it counterbalances the pressure difference available at the tropics. So we find that the air, the hot air which was available at the top of atmosphere in the tropics, it is pushed back towards Earth. So it breaks up into these cells. So we get Hadley cell and Ferrel cell. Similarly, at 60 degree, we again have a change in pattern of movement of air. So practically speaking, we have three cells identified: Hadley cell between equator and tropic, then Ferrel cell between 30 degree latitude and 60 degree latitude, and polar cell between 60 degree and the poles. So this type of wind behavior is already characterized. It has already been studied. Now the wind types, it has been say classified into planetary winds, synoptic winds, mesoscale winds, and microscale winds, dependent upon the spatial scale of wind. So what we talked about earlier was planetary wind. So this is planetary circulation modes. So this is global circulation where the length of operation is 10,000s of kilometer order. Synoptic is because of weather system in the given region. So 1,000 kilometers is the effect. Mesoscale, regional orographic or thermally induced behavior. So 10 to 100 kilometers, a very local scale. Whereas microscale wind patterns, they are totally local because of boundary layer effects. Like in urban areas or in rural areas, the wind patterns are different. So the length of influence is 100 to 1,000 meters. On top of all these types of winds, we have certain specialized situations. One is katabatic anabatic winds. So these are local topographic winds which are due to the cooling or heating respectively along the mountain slopes. Pitrak is another type of hurricane type of wind which is available in Greenland, where the wind is sustained at 70 meters per second downslope. Then we have land breeze and sea breeze, again a topic which we studied in two schools, hurricanes, typhoons. So one wind is definitely a wonderful thing, but it takes many forms. So this diagram, this picture shows you sea breeze and the land breeze, the left hand side. During the day, the land area becomes hotter compared to water bodies. So the less dense air rises, and the air from water bodies, it replaces the air which has risen up. So this becomes sea breeze. So there is a sea breeze from sea towards land in the daytime. At the night time, the land is colder than water bodies. So now the air in contact with the water bodies, it will rise, becoming less dense, and it will be replaced by say wind or air from land. So that is called land breeze. Katabatic winds, suppose we have a mountain or a hill slope which is totally covered with some ice or it is some sort of glacier or something. So the air which contacts this cold surface, it will become, the density will increase and it will start falling down. So we'll find that the wind is constantly moving along the slope, which is called katabatic wind. The reverse is anabatic wind. Suppose there's a slope structure available, mountain or some thing which is warmer than the surroundings. So now the air in contact with this warmer surface, it will take up the heat and it will become less dense. It will start rising. So now we have a rising wind which is rising from bottom towards the top of this slope. So that is called anabatic wind. So with this information, we can easily see that wind takes up many forms, and there has to be certain means to characterize the wind information. So next is measurement of wind characteristics. Now this measurement is very tricky situation. The conventional method was usage of measurement mass, and of course it still is. It doesn't mean that it has been stopped. Still, the conventional method measurement mass is being used, and it has to be used till newer methods are to be evolved. So generally speaking, 10 meter above the ground level, we have a pole which is called the measurement mast. So the height is generally 10 meters because 10 meter was the standard when we started the harnessing of wind energy. So we provide a wind vane system, so which gives you direction information, and anemometer. Anemometer is a device and instrument to measure the velocity of wind. So we organize a set of anemometers and wind vanes on the mast and take the data from this mast and try to correlate. So this way, we are able to measure the characteristics of wind in a given region. Now the hub heights have increased. Hub heights. So suppose this is a turbine. So this is the moving part is called hub. So the height of this hub has increased. So because of that, we have to measure at higher and higher distances. So mass assembly has to be taller and taller, and because of taller mass, the cost has increased prohibitively. But still, we have to go in for measurement. There's no other way out. So once we measure the direction and speed of the wind, then we can easily make out what should be our strategy of harnessing this. The recent phenomena, the recent development of remote sensors. So recently, remote sensors have been developed, which can be used to get the information about the wind speed and direction. So the benefit of remote sensors is the system is a ground level system. We don't require any elevated situations. The sensors are placed at ground. So we have two types of remote sensors. One is called SODAR and other is called LIDAR. SODAR stands for sonic detector and ranging, and LIDAR stands for light detector and ranging. Now in these remote sensors, what is done is we have a set of transmitter and receivers. So transmitter transmits certain waves, certain energy. It strikes wind, and dependent upon the characteristics of wind, some energy is reflected back. The reflected energy is taken up by the transmitter, and then the information is say worked upon to get the information about what is the behavior of wind. So in case of SODAR, sonic, so we are the sonic waves are say transmitted by the transmitter. The sonic waves are reflected by the turbulent air, because air is turbulent everywhere and the density difference exists between layer to layer. Because of the density difference, certain amount of energy will be reflected back, and the reflected energy will be taken up by the receivers. So this way, we'll be able to get the information about what is the say density of air, what is the speed of air, and what is the direction of air. So generally speaking, 200 meter above ground level, we can easily measure with SODAR. These are cheaper option compared to LIDAR, and the power consumption of SODAR is lower than that of LIDAR. LIDAR, on the other hand, uses light energy or electromagnetic waves. We can use ultraviolet, we can use infrared, we can use visible light. So again, the principle is same. From the transmitter, we are giving the light or some electromagnetic wave, and the reflection is taking place from aerosols, particles in the air. So in SODAR, the reflection is from the density of air. So density difference is being measured, whereas in LIDAR, aerosol particles tend to reflect, and the reflection information is taken up by the transmitter, so by the receiver, and the information is finally collaborated, and we get the information about speed as well as the say direction of wind. Now LIDAR has an added benefit Although it is costlier, it consumes more of power. We can use it for control of yaw systems, and it is mountable on wind turbines directly. So yaw system will be coming in a few slides away. So the point is LiDAR can be mounted on the turbines themselves. So this table shows you that the recommended tower height and recommended anemometer height and recommended vane heights. If your height is 30 meters, 37 meters, 55 meters, 60 meters, 80 meters. So the tower height recommended is 30, 34, so on. And obviously we have information standardized that where we should place the anemometers to measure the speed, where we should place the vanes to measure the direction. So this way we can measure the direction and speed of wind, and once this information is ready, only then we can go in for any analysis or any say project on wind energy harnessing. So this picture shows you a measurement mast. So you can see that we have a set of anemometers here, a set of wind vanes here. So this is a picture of a SODAR. This is a picture of a LiDAR. Now from this information, ultimately we create a diagram, what is called a wind rose diagram. We create a diagram, what is called wind rose diagram, which is a circular diagram. We can see from this figure. So we have 16 sectors. The circular area is divided into 16 sectors. So direction north, east, south, and west, and various sectors. And we have concentric circles available on this chart. Each circle corresponds to one frequency. So 0%, 5% frequency, 10% frequency, 15% frequency, 20% frequency, and so on. So once we make the measurements, so as shown in this figure, you can see that the highest frequency is around 16%, and it is available in southwest direction. So we have measured the behavior of wind, and we can easily deduce that the highest frequency is 16%, and the majority of wind is flowing in southwest direction on any given in any given mean time, maybe a month or maybe annual. This has been further say the information can be further enhanced by usage of wind speed. So in consonance with the earlier basic wind rose diagram, even wind speed is also plotted on the same diagram. So again, we have 0%, say 4%, 8%, 12%, 16%, 20% information. So this again represents the frequency of the occurrence of wind. But we have areas which have been colored based upon the wind velocity. So we can see for this particular observation station S1, after measurement of the data, we find that majority of wind is flowing, the highest frequency is 20%, and it is in west direction. Further, most of the time, the speed of this air is 10 to 15 meter per second. At certain times, it is something around 15 to 20. So yellow area is 15 to 20, and this light blue color is 10 to 15. So we can easily make out that at this particular location, majority of wind is available in west direction, and the speed information is also available. This is annual wind direction and speed for various set of 4 stations placed at a given observatory. So we can see that the 4 stations, they are not giving you the same information because wind patterns vary from location to location. So this is annualized information which has been compiled by authors Bharani and Sivaprakasan the year 2019. Now coming to the equipments for the usage of wind energy or harnessing of wind energy. The earlier equipments were called windmills, and the modern ones are called wind turbines. Windmills and wind turbines, although common people, they do not have much of say distinction between the two words, what is windmill, what is wind turbine. But technically speaking, by the terminology of wind energy systems, windmills are different from wind turbines. Windmills were the ancient structures or the older structures which were required, which were say built to create mechanical work, and mechanical work could be in form of grain grinding or pumping of water, irrigation, and so on. So they were used in older times. So these are 2 pictures. So this is the famous Dutch mill, and this is the famous American mill. So these are windmills which are only to create mechanical energy, and we are using mechanical energy as such. But the modern systems, modern wind energy systems are called wind turbines. Turbine is a universal term which is used to denote the equipment which are used to generate electricity. So the modern systems are being put up only and only for production of electricity. So that's why the modern systems are called wind turbines. Now some basics. The power of wind, which can be harnessed, it will depend upon the volume of air which is trapped by the system, the velocity of air, and the mass flow rate. The mass flow rate dm by dt will be given by density rho, area of the mill A, and u is the velocity of the wind. So the kinetic energy is half mu square. Power is energy per unit time. So if I differentiate this with respect to time, I get half dm by dt into u square. So I replace dm by dt. So P becomes 1 by 2 rho A u cube, where rho is the density of air, A is the area of the windmill, and u is the velocity of air. So we can see that the power is proportional to cube of velocity of air. So velocity increases by a factor of 2, the power must increase by a factor of 8. So that is an idealized situation. Wind power density. So this is power as such in watts. Wind power density, because all the data, all the literature is talking of wind power density. So this is power per unit area. So that becomes half rho u cube. That becomes half rho u cube. So wind power density is directly proportional to the density of air, and it is proportional to say cube of velocity. So this is the idealized situation. But we have a limit, what is known as Lanchester-Betz limit. The rotor is collecting the wind energy by slowing down the wind. So the windmills, they operate in the sense that wind energy drives the rotor. So the energy is being supplied from the wind to the rotor, so wind gets slowed down. Now it cannot happen that all the energy of the wind can be taken up by the rotor, that wind is brought to a standstill. This is not possible. So the maximum amount of wind energy which is collected by rotor can be 16 by 27 or around 59%. And practically this limit is 35 to 45%. If I take all the irreversibilities in the mechanical system and all other system friction and all, so the complete system efficiency drops down to 10 to 30% of the total energy available in wind. Then we define another term, what is called coefficient of power. So this is the ratio of actual power generated to the theoretical power generation possible. So generally the coefficient of power for wind turbines, it lies between 0.4 to 0.6. So 40% to 60% of the theoretical power is being generated by any given wind turbine. So 59% is the Lanchester-Betz limit, the limit for the limit of energy generation from any given wind source. Now this is a power curve, that how power varies with velocity. We have said that power is proportional to velocity cube, but actually speaking, for the wind turbines, we find that initially when velocity is very low, there is no power generation. After a certain velocity, generation starts, it rises gradually to an S-shaped curve, and ultimately settles off to a constant value. So definitely we can see that this curve is not justifying the theoretical concept that P is proportional to velocity cube. So we have three types of speeds here. One is called cut-in speed. Then we have a cut-out speed and rated speed. So cut-in speed is the minimum speed at which the turbine blades start rotating and some power starts generating. So that is called cut-in speed. Cut-out speed is the highest speed at which the turbine can work, and if the velocity goes beyond this cut-out speed, definitely the rotor should be brought to a rest, because otherwise the structural damage to the turbine may occur. So there is a limit. So the turbine will be operating between cut-in speed and cut-out speed. I cannot operate a turbine beyond cut-out speed. I cannot operate a turbine below cut-in speed. Then we have rated speed. So we have a rated power. This constant value is called rated power. So the minimum speed at which this rated power is attainable, that is called the rated speed. For this particular example shown, something around 12.5 meter per second is the rated speed. The wind power is classified into 7 categories, category 1 to category 7. So 1 is poor, 2 is marginal, 3 is fair, 4 is good, 5 is excellent, 6 is outstanding and 7 is superb. So 10-meter height and 50-meter height, two information is available in this table. So wind power density and mean wind speed. So if it is category 1 poor, so wind power density is less than 100 and speed is less than 4.4. If I move to a height of 50 meter per second, sorry, 50 meter from 10 meter, the wind power density of less than 200 is still given the rank 1 and the wind speed is less than 5.6. So this way you can see from the table that the wind power density is lower at 10 meter and it is higher at 50 meters. The velocity at 10 meters lower than velocity at higher heights. So say so for the category 7, wind power density more than 400 is called superb for 10-meter height, and more than 800 watt per meter square is called superb for 50-meter height. Similarly, the wind speed is more than 7 here, more than 8.8. Now, this information has been compiled for various seasons, that how density varies with season to season. So winter, spring, summer, and autumn. You can see that uh, in the first graph for the winter, the mean change is 0.55%. For spring, the density mean change is negative 0.29%. For summers, the density change is again negative minus 0.54% mean value. And for autumn, it is again a positive value 0.28%. So from this figure, we can easily make out the region where the density changes are maximum. So density changes are maximum in the northern hemisphere, as marked out here. And here, the density changes, negative changes are highest here. Here, in summers again, negative changes are higher here, and the positive changes are higher. So we have said that power depends upon wind power density depends upon density. So density must be measured, and density is varying like this in the atmosphere. Wind power density, the further information from the same source. So winter, spring, summer, and autumn. You can see that in the winters, the wind power density increases by 0.52%. Mean in the spring it decreases by 0.23%. In summer it again decreases by 0.54%. And in autumn we have increased by 0.32%. Mean values all across the world. Seasonal energy production, winter compared to summers. So we can see that the seasonal energy production is again compared in these two figures, summer compared to winters. You can see that in winters, the seasonal energy production is around 10% change in the northern areas, and it is around say minus 5% change in the northern areas during summers. Now coming to equipments, the wind turbines, they are classified based upon various criteria. First is based upon rotor axis, based upon number of blades, based upon rotor speed, based upon direction, based upon power control. So rotor axis, we have horizontal wind turbines, vertical wind turbines, number of blades 1, 2, 3 or more. Rotor speed could be fixed speed or variable speed, direction upwind, or it could be downwind. Downwind is not generally preferred because of the boundary layer requirements. Downwind blades are not very good in operation. Power control could be stall, could be pitch, or could be yaw. So components of horizontal axis wind turbine. So we have the rotor, which consists of blades and hub. We have the nacelle, which houses the gearbox, the generator, and the brake assembly. Tower for hoisting this wind turbine, anemometer, and wind vane. So this is a figure of the cutout portion of a wind system, a sketch, schematic sketch. So we have the blades and the hub. So this total set is called rotor. The rotor is connected to a low speed shaft. There's a gearbox which converts the low speed to high speed because electrical generation has to go at high speed. So there's a gearbox involved. Then we have the generator. The generator, whatever is the electricity generated, it is transmitted to the tower by cabling. So tower is the hoisting mechanism. Nacelle is the covering provided to this gearbox, generator, and shaft arrangement, that is called nacelle. Then we provide an anemometer and wind vane on the nacelle to get information about the wind direction and the wind speed. And according to the information from this speed and direction, there is a controller which controls the behavior of the wind vane. So we have a yaw control here. Suppose the wind direction changes from say left to right, and it has shifted to right to left. So this windmill should rotate. So yaw will rotate this mill towards right. So lidars, we had said lidars can be mounted on the nacelle. So instead of this anemometer and wind vane, I can have a lidar mounted here. So lidar can drive the controller in that sense. So rotor collects the wind energy by using the blades, and blades are attached to hub, and which is connected to shaft, already said. So blades can be wooden, fiberglass, metal, alloys, carbon fibers. Number of blades are generally up to 3, so that the interference of wind speed patterns of other blades is not say observed. So we have two designs. One is called drag design, other is called lift design. So in drag, the blades are pushed away, so rotation speed is low. Lift design, like airfoil design, the wind lifts the blade. So rotation speed is high, so it is suitable for electrical generation. So most of the designs are lift designs. We have a term called tip speed ratio, the blade tip speed divided by wind speed. So it is generally up to 10 for lift design and around 1 for drag design. So that's why lift design is preferred. So we have single blade turbines, two blade turbines, and three blade turbines. Single blade, we have a blade and a counterweight. So this is least costly, but the stability is a big issue, so generally not preferred. Two blades, obviously, if I compare three blade to two blade, the two blade will be lower cost compared to three blade. But to prevent wind shocks, complex designing is required. So again, most of the turbines are not two blade turbines. Three blade systems, they give very good output and better stability in storms. Definitely costly out of the three options, but still most of the turbines have three blade systems. Now gearbox, we already said that generally the speed of turbine is 40 to 400 rpm, and the generator is going to operate at 1200 to 1800 rpm, so we require a gearbox. The generators, the electricity generators can be of three types: DC generator, AC synchronous, or AC asynchronous motors. So DC generators, we have magnetic field on the stator and armature is on the rotor. So it is for local consumption only. So when we want to generate electricity and use it locally, then we use DC generator. AC synchronous motors, synchronization of frequency with the grid is very delicate, so that becomes a very big disadvantage of synchronous motors. Here, the system is of course very rugged and simple, but the constant frequency maintenance is a big headache. So it is costly and it is prone to damage. AC asynchronous motors, we have induction machines. So here again we have two options: fixed speed machines or doubly fed induction generators. In the fixed speed machines, initially the most of the machines made were fixed speed machines in the years 1980s to 1990s. So maximum turbines are of this type, but they are very prone to damage. So then doubly fed induction generators were investigated, and around the new machines are almost 85% of this type of generators. Then braking, we have to put brakes on the wind turbine, because suppose the wind speed suddenly increases because of some storm or something, so the wind turbine may be damaged because of the high speed of wind. So we must brake. So there can be a mechanical brake available, or we can have pitching of blades so that the wind spills over, or they can be spoilers. So drag spoiler flaps are provided on the blade or hub, which activate a spring-loaded mechanism to rotate the machine sideways. Suppose we find a So we can change the pitch of the blades so that the wind is not able to affect the blades. One option, that is pitching control. Or we can simply have spoilers. So let's change the direction of the wind mill itself. So instead of facing the wind, let's make it 90-degree. So in that way, wind won't affect the mill. So that is the use of spoilers. The tower for hoisting the windmill can be tubular, can be lattice or guide. Tubular can be simple tubular structure, steel structure or something. Lattice is this type of geometry, and guide is we have guy ropes which keep the tower in place. So the amount of area required in guide system is higher than the area required by tubular or lattice structures. So fixed speed systems were in force till 1990s, which was Danish concept. These are called type 1 systems. The generator is directly connected to the grid through transformer. Price is very low, simple and robust, but the stresses are very high and fatigue is very high. and the power output cannot be optimized. So that is the major disadvantage. So then we switch over to variable speed. So variable speed systems were used. So where the speed was varied by using of controllers. So definitely when controllers come into play, the things become costlier. So we have limited variable speed and variable speed with power conversion, type 2 type and type 3 machines. Limited are OptiSlip and FlexiSlip. So here the resistance of rotor is changed by the controller mechanism so that the speed gets changed in response to changes in wind speed. So circuitry is simple, stresses are reduced, we achieve certain partial control but at a cost. Variable speed with power conversion. So here the controllers are more, so up to 30% variation can be done. So in limited variation only 10%, in 30% can be done through variable speed. Losses are still lower. It is very complex system and expensive system. So when we have variable speed system, we measure the RPM of the windmill, wind turbine. So nominal RPM, so they control the pitch and further information. So we have lots of controller involved. So we've said that power curve should be rising and then leveling off for a fixed speed system. If it is a variable speed system, it goes up as shown by the dotted line and then comes down at high speeds. So this is how variable speed system power curve will look like. The power control is required for reliable and safe operation and optimizing the output. So at higher wind speed, the power generator may exceed the rated values. So we have to avoid this. So we have to limit the power generation within some range. So one option is pitch control, change the pitch of blades. So that is a simple concept, change the pitch of blades. So the effect of wind speed on blades will be varied. And this way we can have a stable operation. So this acts as a security system for high speed winds. Initially, we had hydraulic actuators which changed the pitch of all the blades in the same manner. So when the pitching control started, but now we have advanced controllers, actuators for each and every blade because the wind turbines have become very large in their sizes. So the blades, the top blade and the bottom blade are not coming, so they are not having the same type of load. So we find that the loading of the blades is not the same. So definitely the pitching should not be same. So that's why you have an individual actuator for each blade in the pitching control. Second is stall control. We stall the blades. We make them come to rest. So we have passive. So if the pitch, change the pitches. So the pitches blades are bolted to hubs and blades are twisted aerodynamically. So blade design is such that if the turbulence is generated downside of the blade, leading to no lift at higher speed. When speed is very high, because of the turbulence behind the blade, lifting is avoided. So we find that the system stalls, the pitch and the machine stops. It is simple, lower efficiency, but it is very complex to build. So it is limited to small or medium scale systems. Active systems, so it is similar to pitch blade systems. So blades are pitched to waste the energy. So they are used for large wind turbines. Now coming to yaw control that we have said, we will be talking later on. So in yaw control, we try to maximize the power output and minimize the asymmetric limit loading by usage of a rotor. So this is a slow action system. So here in the yaw control, we are going to say shift the orientation of the turbine itself dependent upon the wind speed and the direction. Now coming to wind turbine, vertical wind turbine, the second type of turbine was vertical wind turbine. The advantage of this turbine is the direction of the wind does not affect the operation. So wind may be flowing from any direction, it will operate. The generator and transmission are at ground level, so weights are lower, so costing is lower. But the major disadvantage is they cannot exploit higher wind velocities at higher elevation. So that is a major disadvantage. So that's why the vertical wind turbines are not very famous. They are not very practically used. So we have various designs, various Zero Mill, Savonius type of windmills. So the major components are again guide wire. So we have two hubs here, and we have blades, and then the shaft, then the brake, gearbox, and generator. So these are similar to horizontal systems. So this is a typical diagram sketch of vertical system. So the direction of wind is not going to affect the operation of this type of turbine. So this is Darius. It's something like an exhibitor. So this is Savonius design, Maglev design, Novichu design. So a number of designs in vertical systems, but the major disadvantage that the wind speed is higher at higher altitudes. We want to explore it. It is not possible. So the wind turbine sizes, they have increased down the years, starting with 17-meter rotor diameter. We have gone up to around 125 to 150 diameter. The output, which was started at 75 kilowatts, has climbed up to around 5 and 5 plus megawatts down the years, and still the things are growing, the sizes are growing. The current status of India. India occupies fourth position worldwide of China, US, and Germany. We have potential of under 2 gigawatt at 180 meter hub height and 302 gigawatt at 100 meter hub height. Gujarat has the highest potential of 44.23 gigawatt. As on date, 34.4 gigawatt grid connected systems are there, and wind energy accounts for 64% of total electricity produced by renewable sources in India. 4148 megawatt of wind energy projects have been commissioned in the year 2019, and target is 60 gigawatts by the year 2022. National Institute of Wind Energy has been created at Chennai, stationed at Chennai, which is a self-sufficient R&D center, which is mandated to draw wind maps all across the country, and it has many stations all across the country to measure the wind information. Offshore wind power is also being investigated because India is blessed with a long coastline, so offshore wind power could be an option. So this diagram shows you the wind power density measured by NIWE at 80-meter level. So this is at 100-meter level, wind speed versus the locations. Then the power potential, wind power potential, these information have been compiled by NIWE in the year 2019. Then the state-wise information has been compiled for at 100-meter hub height. So we have 3 ranks of systems: rank 1 where the land is wasteland, rank 2 cultivable land, rank 3 forest land. So for various states and for the various union territories, the potential has been listed in this. So total potential is 302 gigawatt. Total potential of India is 302 gigawatt at 100-meter hub height. So this is the pie chart for renewables. So we can see for the energy consumption patterns, production patterns, sorry. So we can see that the renewables, they are occupying around 23% out of the whole energy scenario of India. And wind occupies the maximum say percentage out of the all renewables. Installed wind power till 31st December 2019 for various states is mentioned in this table, and total installed capacity in megawatts is 37,505.2 megawatts. So the wind energy generated down the years from the year 2014-15 up to 19-20, you can see it has grown each year. For the last entry, it is compiled only up to 31st October, and maybe if you take the full year itself, so it will be higher than 62,000 million units. Wind power potential 120 meters, so 100 meters, and as well as 120 meters. So if we talk of 100 meters, 30 gigawatt. At 120 meters, it is 695.5 gigawatts. So obviously, higher we go, better the potential. So barriers which we are facing in India: technical barriers, financial barriers, environmental barriers, and socio-economic barriers. Technical barriers, first of all, lack of infrastructure and institutions. Indian market is flooded with European technology, so almost no local standards, but nowadays local standards have been formulated, and 31 models are being produced by about 15 companies, and we have achieved around 70 to 75% indigenization. The modern turbines are efficient, but when we talk of farms, there may be interference and efficiency will be lowered. Grid stability is a big issue in India. Grid stability, it has been emphasized in the yesterday's lecture by Professor Sharma also, that the Indian grid is very, very fragile. So lots of work has to be done to make it stable. Proper scheduling and forecasting techniques are required to reduce the downtimes. Financial barriers, initial investment is very high, so risk factor is very high. The distribution companies may not buy the excessive energy, or they may withhold the payment, so which say this disturbs the apple cart. So competition between companies may lead to financial barriers. Wind energy tariffs themselves may be prohibitive. Policies may be prohibitive. Environmental barriers, effect of wildlife, bird fertility has been all the environmentalists have been saying that bird fertility must be taken into account because bird fertility is very high with the air turbine system, wind turbine systems. Uh, the wildlife habitats also change, so we must keep this in mind. Visual problem, visual disturbance. If we place the wind turbines near road, there can be reflection of light from the rotor blades. There can be shadow flickering, so which can cause problem for the motorists. Noise pollution, we can have noise which is aerodynamic in nature or mechanical in nature. There can be local climatic changes because we are artificially mixing hot air with vapor, so there can be some climatic changes which has to be documented. Socioeconomic barriers, local populace may not allow you to acquire land at certain important sites. Then NIMBY syndrome, not in my backyard syndrome. People avoid such installations in their backyards or near their places. The transportation of large components by road is maybe opposed by public. Now, government policies, they play a decisive role in promoting or demoting some technology or systems. So policies, uh, some policies of Indian government are listed in this slide. Integrated Energy Policy 2006. So strong network of renewable energy systems had been envisaged. Private land could be used for wind farms. Tradable tax relief certifications could be allowed. IREDA, Indian Renewable Energy Development Agency, was converted to a national apex body to take care of finances for all renewable systems. Generation-based incentives 2009. So incentive of 0.5 rupees per unit produced if the plant is supplying for 4 years minimum and 10 years maximum, with capital cost of 1 crore per megawatt to avail this incentive. Renewable energy certificates were introduced in 2010. Trading was allowed. Clean Energy Fund was set up in the year 2010-11 so to create green energy corridors. The 8 windy states have been sanctioned rupees 10,000 crores to improve the intrastate as well as interstate transmission. Offshore wind energy policy 2015. The resource assessment has been carried out in coastal areas of Tamil Nadu and Gujarat. Tamil Nadu is found to be better potential compared to Gujarat, but still 1 gigawatt capacity is proposed to come up in Gujarat because Gujarat has been, very active in pursuing this project. So NIWE is the nodal agency for taking up this. NIWE has been created and it has been designated as a nodal agency for all the wind related systems. Wind bidding scheme 2016. So wind energy projects 1 gigawatt capacity are to be integrated on the central transmission utility. E-bidding of wind energy is allowed so that the non-windy states can buy wind energy from windy states on a transparent manner. National Wind Solar Energy Hybrid Policy 2018. So the subsidy for standalone wind system, solar system has been allowed for hybrid solar and wind energy farms, and the requirement is each of the two components should at least contribute 25% of the rated power. So this way you can see that government policies have been consistent in pushing the renewable energies. Statewide tariffs have been allowed. 2500 megawatt interstate transmission system has been sanctioned to connect the solar wind hybrid projects, and Solar Energy Corporation of India has been made a nodal agency. 11,000 crores have been sanctioned for Leh Ladakh transmission line to connect the solar and wind projects in the cold desert to the rest of the country. So this is an example of the state-wise tariffs. This is an old data before e-bidding was allowed, but we can see the information from state to state in this table. This is the minimum tariffs which were obtained after auctioning by e-bidding. So Solar Energy Corporation of India, when it bid 3.46, and then in second tranche it was 2.64. So we can easily see the after bidding the tariff has reduced to below 3 rupees per kilowatt hour. These are the top 5 wind farms available in India. Bhupendal at Tamil Nadu, Jaisalmer at Rajasthan, Ramanvale at Maharashtra, Dhargaon again at Maharashtra, Wankusa Ware at Maharashtra. So the capacities of these farms is mentioned in the table. So these are the wind farms which are occupying the topmost category based upon their installed capacity. Now coming to advantages of wind power, it is a clean source of energy. We don't have any problem of CO2, SOx, NOx, particulates. The only greenhouse gases associated are during the manufacture of turbines. 1 megawatt wind energy offsets 2,360 tons of carbon dioxide. Sustainability, wind is a sustainable system as long as sun is available, winds are sustainable. And with global warming, more and more turbulence is there, so sustainability is not an issue. Windy areas are generally not in competition with the urban development areas, so location is not much of an issue. Energy security. Wind is a raw material, no cost of wind, so energy security is better. Water conservation, cost effectiveness. 75% of the cost incurred is in setting up of the system and is recoverable within 1 year. And the average life of wind system, wind turbines is around 30 years. Challenges, intermittency of wind. Wind is having a very unpredictable behavior. There can be situation that when I require, there's no generation. When I have generation, there's no requirement. So we have to go in for storage facilities. Now, when we go in for storage facilities, definitely I'm multiplying the things, so the things become costly. But there's a possibility I can store in form of latent heat, I can store in form of sensible heat, or I can store in form of batteries. The wind turbines are located remotely, so transmission costs may become high. Noise pollution can be a problem. So if we are around 500 meter away from a wind turbine, the noise is around 35 decibels, whereas the normal conversation is at 60 decibels, so that becomes an acceptable behavior. So wind turbine should be at least 500 meters away. Aesthetics is the problem. People may not like the scene. Damage to wildlife. The fast-moving turbines are more fatal than the slow-moving ones. It has been estimated that 33,000 bird deaths have been caused by wind turbines compared to 100 million deaths attributed to cats in USA. So you can see that definitely wind turbines are contributing towards bird deaths, but seeing the other activities of or natural systems, the numbers are very less. Safety, loose blade or warped blade may damage the tower itself, so we must locate it away from the habitat. Capital or cost is very high. So these challenges must be addressed for better harnessing of wind energy. Environmental impacts, noise, we have already said, aerodynamic and mechanical. So howling sound is made when wind passes through the blades. Mechanical components may create noise. So with adequate design, the noise can be reduced. Visual impacts, certain countries have created say norms that the pixels of the windmill should be in consonance with the pixels in the wind turbine should be in consonance with the surroundings, so that visually the impact is smoother. Disco effect, shadow flickers, reflection of light from blades can take place. Blade motion can cause flickering shadows, so this has to be avoided. Wildlife, marine life may be disturbed. So when we set up a plant, there is deforestation. So as soon as the plant is set up, we must go in for afforestation so that the soil erosion is arrested. Ecological effect on local climate need documentation. Now coming to the frontier areas of the recent developments, we have hybrid systems, offshore wind turbines, airborne wind turbines, and wind trees. So these are certain concepts which are being investigated right now. Wind solar hybrids and wind hydrogen hybrids. Wind solar, when we put up a wind farm, we have lots of area available which is not usable for generation of wind. We can put up solar cells or solar systems, solar panels underneath, so that we have a hybrid between wind and solar energy. So that is one hybrid. Second hybrid is wind hydrogen hybrid. So we produce electricity from the windmill. A part of electricity is supplied to electrolyzer to create hydrogen, to produce hydrogen. So hydrogen is a clean fuel. So this is another hybrid which is being investigated, which is being researched. Then we have offshore wind turbines. USA has a potential of 2,000 gigawatts offshore. The turbines can be very tall. There's no problem of height and all, flickering and everything, because it is placed away from human habitats. Underwater cabling is used. India has a target of 5 gigawatt by the year 2022 and 30 gigawatt by this year should be 2030. 30 gigawatt by the year 2030. There's a mistake. It should be 2030. So we have set up the targets. Potential of 2 gigawatts, we already said in our previous slides. So first offshore turbine was put up in Denmark. It is decommissioned right now. Still 28.308 gigawatt systems are in operation offshore. UK is contributing 9,945 megawatts. China is contributing 5,930 megawatts, and so on. So you can see that each country we have the contribution of offshore by UK, China, Denmark, Germany, Netherlands, Belgium. 50% capacity addition has taken place in offshore in the last 3 years. So that is a very recent phenomenon. So we can see that the wind turbines which are to be placed offshore, we can have spar buoy type where it is floating arrangement. So we have guy wires keeping the wind turbine in place. So we can have semi-submersible, so floating as well as submersible. And then we have tension leg platforms. So we have a single anchor and guy wires to keep it in place. So many designs are being investigated. So offshore wind potential by NIW is shown in this figure. You can see that the area in Gujarat and area near Tamil Nadu is definitely an area which must be used for, or we should be explored and we should be used for, say, harnessing the offshore wind. A very recent concept is wind tree. So we have tried to, the people have researched and they have tried to mimic the natural trees by a wind tree. So we have a steel structure, stems and all, and we have leaves. Leaves are arrow leaves. So instead of normal leaves, they are arrow leaves. They are painted green. So these leaves are silent systems. First of all, the wind direction does not affect the operation of this system. They can work with low wind speeds. Arrow leaves are basically vertical axis mini generators. So they are basically vertical axis systems, which are mini generators and themselves. Each leaf contributes 65 watts, and the power generated can be 3,500 to 13,500 kilowatt hour from a single tree. So the first wind tree was installed in Paris in 2015, and second was placed again in France and Brittany. So the threshold speed of operating a arrow leaf is 2.5 meters per second. So this is a cut section. So we have vertical axis and blades. So when wind enters the leaves, the blades rotate and we have generation in the leaf. So the generation of each leaf, it is taken to the stem and ultimately we collect the information. It can exploit slightest breeze and turbulent wind, uh, which is generally available in the urban setup. So it is very conducive to place in urban setup near buildings, near offices. We can generate electricity. The power curve for wind tree is very different from power curve for wind turbines. So we can see that in wind turbines, the power curve rose and ultimately settled off. Now here it is constantly increasing with speed and ultimately leveling off. So this curve has been investigated for a wind tree. One wind tree with 36 arrow leaves is equivalent to 864 kg coal burnt per year. So this is the data available for wind. Then another frontier area is airborne wind turbines. That atmospheric winds are very fast and more consistent than the surface wind, because at the surface of Earth, lots of topographical features and other features, they result in disturbance of winds. Whereas when we go away from the surface, the atmospheric winds are very consistent in their behavior. So we have tethered systems. So the wind turbine is airborne. So turbine itself is airborne, it is placed in the atmosphere, and a tether connects it to the Earth's surface. So these two diagrams, you can see the turbine is in the air, and we have a tether which is connecting it to the Earth's surface. We have two types as a concept. One is ground gen type, and another is fly gen type. Ground gen type, the generator is placed at the ground, and the tension in the tether is used to run this generator. So that is ground gen type. Flygen, the generator itself is also airborne, and the electricity is conveyed to the feeder at the base of the earth. So this concept is again at a research stage. So now to conclude what I have said in this presentation, first of all, wind energy, it has very high potential for harnessing, and it is definitely a green energy. Now the challenge of inconsistent behavior of wind is something which must be investigated. Capital costs are very high for wind energy systems. Efforts are required for efficient and accurate means of predicting wind behavior so that the inconsistency of wind behavior can be kept in check. The simulated data, because we have simulated software which are being used to simulate the information about wind behavior, it must be corroborated with the physical measurements. So physical measurements is a big issue. New techniques are being investigated for better tapping of energy available. So lots of research is required for, first of all, the efficient and accurate means of predicting the behavior. Then the predictions, they must be corroborated with the physical measurements actually, and new techniques are being investigated. So that's all. So these are the references which I've used for compilation of the data in this presentation. Thank you. Any questions?